So here we are. um, so one of the things that I was thinking about when Rebecca asked us to do this was actually the notion of happiness.
Yes.
Because, I'm 40 something and grew up around a lot of hip hop culture. And that culture made it such that you had to be very serious. Anger was the norm. You could not say things like, I'm happy. So now we're in 2016, and one of the biggest artists in the world is named Chance the Rapper, and he literally just says, I'm happy on his songs. He literally had a parade to get people to register to vote. He did a concert, and then he just led like hundreds of people to go register to vote.
Yes.
And so just this idea to me of how we can be happy, how we can like depict ourselves as happy as men, I think that that's, part of, I guess, the puzzle that we're dealing with.
Okay. I guess we should preface that neither of us did that piece.
Right, I didn't.
The gentleman who did that piece is unfortunately ill, so we were called in to, in a general sense, talk about queerness and otherness and Black masculinity and such. And you're not queer.
No.
You're a heterosexual lady.
Yes.
Yeah. And I am. I was raised by immigrants, a Czechoslovakian who was of Jewish descent and a Jamaican mother who was of a Rastafarian descent. And so in the hip hop moment, I was spending a lot of my time with Jimmy Cliff
Oh, wow.
and Bob Marley and the part of that experience, and Ziggy Marley, because he was an 80s guy too.
Yeah.
Was about how big the Rastafari smile is when they're in a good mood. And one of the things that I remember, I grew up in Hyde Park in Chicago, not far from where Obama's house is.
Right.
And near that place, Muhammad Ali used to live, and the Nation of Islam lived. Farrakhan lived there. And so lining up that street would be gentlemen of the Nation of Islam in their suits and their ties and their serious expressions. And I remember thinking as a young brown queer boy walking around, and I was giving you some fever. I was going to make up and rip up my clothes because I was punk rock and all that stuff. And despite all that, despite all these markers of queerness that I was, giving out to the world, the Nation of Islam brothers would always nod and always give me a little bit of the nod.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And I remember thinking in my little 16, 17-year-old way, was like, that was very cool that I had a link to what this thing was about. And so when I look at Chance the Rapper and the Will Smith's children,
Yes.
and all these other lovely Jaden and Willow,
and Willow, yeah.
all these lovely kids. And I've been thinking about them lately over the last couple of weeks, and I was like, I hope they're still smiling. And what I have found is that they kind of are. I know a couple of young, queer, African-American, maybe they're even trans, kids who are like giving you fever all day, night long. They're always late for appointments and, and talking really fast, and, then they get to the point. And I was just like, hey, how you doing, man? What's going on? And they were delighted. They were delighted because, and this is something that I was echoing too, going back to my Nation of Islam ad hocness, I will get to this point, is that they were telling us, our elders were telling us this day was coming.
Yeah.
I was a teenager in the 80s.
Me too.
So my teachers were coming of age in the 60s and the 50s, and they told us this day was coming.
Oh, yeah.
They told us.
Yeah.
They were very clear. And these kids who I'm referencing, these young people, young queer colored people in my life, they also got that message. And for some reason, they like the idea of it all being thrown onto the fire. Because what else, because I was talking to them, I'm just sort of paraphrasing what the conversation was, what else would the mirror of Obama be? What else would the 8 years that we experienced, the likes we'll never see again? Because underneath that 8 years, of course, in their definition, was another lie, right. A lie of drones, a lie, and I won't even go down the list. Because what is the presidency but it is a part that you play. And kids with their Instagram accounts and their handles are very clear on what it is to play a part. And maybe even more so than we were.
I think
when
so,
we were teenagers.
Definitely, yeah.
So they see it as a part, they see it as a farce. And they asked me, okay, old man, what do you think? And I was like, well, earlier today I was like, America, don't call a doctor anymore, call a priest. But perhaps with this attitude, we can collect ourselves, and we can relinquish our addiction to depression and anger and outrage, and go out and get all those people in those red states who we're linked to, and bring them into the fold, and in 2 years, crush, just because we can. Not because it's actually going to do anything. Because as Black people, we know it's not going to do anything. No, right. Nothing ever does anything. No, it doesn't. Right. We all live under the white supremacist system. We always have been. These are not new words to us. These are not new concepts to us. This is just a very gaudy display of what we've already been looking, what they've been telling, what they told us in the 80s, what Tribe Called Quest told us in the 80s.
Yeah, what they all told us.
What Sid Vicious told us in the 80s. I think about my mother, who was a Jamaican immigrant, like I said. She walked in on me one day. I had rented Clockwork Orange from the video store, and it was of the scene with the eyeballs and everything. And she walked in and she went, oh. Not because she was disgusted or upset with me, but because now she had to sit down and explain what all this meant. And she knew that day was coming because she knew I was going to say Clockwork Orange eventually. I'm a filmmaker, so I always think about it in film sections. But yeah, the whole thing that's going on today is these people watched Sallow, 120 Days of Sodom, and completely missed the point. And now we have to school them. Does that?
It does. I mean, so in talking about young people, one of my nephews is 4.
Oh.
And he is gender nonconforming.
Hey.
He wears my sister's shoes. If he sees pink, he gets so excited.
Sure.
And if you ever try to question him, I don't want to do this. He does this thing to you, basically. He's like, you know what? No, it's not going to work out that way.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's we're in an interesting time where there's a lot more depth to how Black men are able to express themselves. And I think that, I've seen great leaps and bounds from even 10 years ago because of this free communication that we have, and this ability to exchange images of ourselves and be visible.
Yeah.
So, I think if it was 10 years ago, I would worry about my nephew. He's in West Philadelphia. He is African American and he is Jewish. His name is Akiba Solomon Friedman.
Shout out.
Yes, best of both worlds. I would be worried, but now I'm actually more worried about his brother. His brother is he's the enforcer. He's the one that's oh, I don't want to play with dolls. And Akale's just I would take that doll. He's a carefree Black boy, what people have been saying. And that gives me hope, when we look out into what's happening, and all the, clearly horrible things, but, maybe it sounds corny, but I'm just kind of like, the kids are the future.
Well, they are, yeah. I mean, I'm 6'4", and I've been 6'4" since I was like 14. If I had been like 5'11", I would have totally been gender nonconforming. If I could just pull things off the rack and put them on, I would have totally done that. If I still could do that, I would totally do it. But what's let me, in terms of like Black masculinity, in 1965, if you Google when you get home, this singer named Jackie Shane. Little Jackie Shane, as she was sometimes called. In 1965, this is a Black drag queen, soul singer who studied under Little Richard, moved to Toronto in 65, and for a brief time in Toronto became a sensation.
Wow.
Because she was badass. She was masculine and feminine. She couldn't wear a dress because drag was against the law.
Right.
But wearing little outfits and the hair and the makeup and everything, she was flawless. So she could sing her face off. She always like hanging behind the beat. There's one video clip of her that exists from a TV show.
Oh, wow.
And one live album and several sides. Then she disappeared from view. She's flawless. She's absolutely flawless. And this is 1965. She's much more aggressive than Little Richard in her sexuality. She talks very openly and happily about her queer life and her. She uses the term chicken to describe her boyfriend, which is a term that means young gay boy.
Oh.
And was a twink. What do we not call a twink was then called a chicken. She discusses that in her spoken word raps during the songs and how much fun they're having, how much money they're making, how good she look. And she's the bravado of a rapper, the funk of Millie Jackson, and the big smile of Chance the Rapper. And it's 1965.
Wow.
And I have been obsessed with Little Jackie Shane for quite a while now, but never more so since the last 3 weeks. Because every time I'm feeling like, Lord have mercy.
Right.
I put on Little Jackie Shane and go, yes. Well, if that sister brother broad could do it and spin some soul at that point in Toronto.
Right.
It's cold as hell. White. It was before,
Justin Trudeau.
Yeah. It was before the Toronto music scene became an industry. It is presumed by musicologists, had she been a couple years later, or the music scene had been a couple years earlier, she might have actually broken. She was badass. And to have her, but you know this other thing I heard, speaking of Black people who are queer and laughing, Michael Jackson was up for the part of Luke Skywalker.
He was?
It was discussed.
Wow.
And he was down for it. But, if Wiz era, big-nosed, brown skin, pre-off the wall, 1976 Michael Jackson had been Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
If Jackie Shane had been a star on the level of Little Richard, then maybe Michael Jackson could have been Luke Skywalker, and then maybe Hillary would be president.
That's like the best theory I've heard. the best analysis that I've heard ever.
You've got to laugh.
Yeah, you do. You do have
You've
to
got to
laugh.
start thinking bigger. You got to start thinking long term, and like they do, the long game.
The long game, but so two other things, because I know it looks like we need to wrap soon.
Our micro conversation is.
So, I know, right, micro. So two things that have also given me a lot of strength in the last couple of days is that the youth command of Photoshop is so real.
Yes.
So the way, I know I sound like an old woman, but like the way that they can crank out memes that are both nuanced and hilarious and shareable is amazing to me. That is some of the biggest resistance that I've seen so far, besides, again, it's there's anger underneath it.
Yeah.
Right? But they also, like you said, they think it's ridiculous. Like they think it is preposterous, and they show you that. And then the other thing that's been coming up for me a lot is that there is a huge contingent right now in Black humor and YouTube videos of queer young men.
Yes.
They are running humor right now. They are the funniest in the entire world, and they are not saying things that they're supposed to say. They're like, guess what, I'm here. You're an idiot. you're gonna laugh, but also.
Yes, ma'am.
But it's amazing that they're able to represent themselves. It's not a caricature. It's not a put on. It's not anything. It's that they understand where they are politically, even if they can't articulate it. And they're like, humor has always been something that Black people and oppressed people fall back on. And we sure are oppressed because they sure are funny.
You know what else they can do in Photoshop? They're not looking. Can they make those memes? They can also identify when they send us some crap that isn't right.
Yeah.
And they say, that's Photoshop. That ain't real.
Right.
And that is an important skill that I also don't possess.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm going to learn it right after we Little Jackie Shane Photoshop.
Little Jackie Shane, and no, bring the kids in to identify the Photoshop for you.
Okay.
Stand up, take a bow. Stand up and take a bow.
Okay.
Thank you.